Hey man, just curious, why don't you own Bitcoin?
Because I like working overtime while watching my savings buy me less every year.
Ma'am, any reason you haven't bought Bitcoin?
Well, I enjoy being humbled by double-digit inflation and $100 shampoo.
Hi there. Mind if I ask why you don't own any Bitcoin?
Because I would hate to accidentally afford college for my kids one day.
Quick question, why don't you own Bitcoin?
Because watching my paycheck buy less and less is the only thing keeping me awake on night shifts.
What's going on, guys? K-Dub here with another episode of Crypto Zombie. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a great start to your week. Bitcoin explosive move over the weekend. We did, in fact, hit a new all-time high for Bitcoin. Kind of crazy. It was a bit of a slow, grinding sort of summer, right? We were just in that 100K area. We couldn't seem to get out of it, but as we were building that base, we knew that obviously every time we had those dips, they were getting bought up, and we did, in fact, do something that Bitcoin has never done before. And I'm not talking about making a new all-time high, which we did. I'm not talking about the highest daily candle close, highest weekly close. No, there is something else that's even more massive that I do want to talk about, which is really screaming some massive signs. You could see we really haven't updated this chart over on Blowfin for quite a while. We had this falling wedge sort of pattern, and generally speaking, they have about a 70-ish% chance of breaking to the upside. We did break to the upside, right? But we got hit with that resistance, and some people were calling it possibly a double top. I heard some people saying that was it. Well, it looks like the bears were wrong again because Bitcoin was able to push above that. Now, we did hit around 123-ish on, multiple exchanges. We're having a little bit of a pullback today. Nothing does go up in a straight line, clearly. But the thing that is most interesting to me is we have Bitcoin not only over 100,000, but we have Bitcoin hitting 123,000. And yet, if we come over here and look at the Google trends, you could see that we're pretty low on the interest, only about 20, obviously 100 being the highest back in 2017. So you could take that two ways. Maybe retail is aware of Bitcoin, right? Nobody needs to Google or search Bitcoin anymore. We already know what it is. Or maybe nobody cares or no one's paying attention, which is kind of insane right now to think how long we've been, making videos on this channel specifically, all the way down to 15,000. We were making videos when Bitcoin was $2,000, right? The opportunities have been there, but it just seems like sometimes the average, person might be scared to take that opportunity. And now the bigger question again is, well, Bitcoin's over 100, it's 120, whatever it is. It's obviously too expensive. I probably shouldn't buy now. Although we know that in hindsight, the 20K top seemed like a ridiculous buy when it went down to 3,000, but then we went up to 60 and everyone said, man, I wish I had bought, right? And then we went down to 15. It's over. Nobody bought. Again, they were too scared. Now we're up at 100. And every single time it's too expensive. It's too expensive. It's too expensive. But when you realize the velocity of money, especially with the M2 money supply and the printing, I think it's kind of obvious what's happening here, guys. And, we are putting in nice higher highs, nice higher lows. And remember when we sort of shot through this area right here, we just had all these massive green candles. We were saying that generally you want to build some form of a structure. You have this down here. And once we broke out, there was nothing in this area. Well, we came down, we retested that, and we broke out of that area. This is a very, very constructive pattern for Bitcoin. And if you just want to talk about ultimately, just some of the possible levels that we could see for Bitcoin, realistically, not like moon boy crazy shots, just simply looking at this Fibonacci extension right here, you could see that the next area is the 1.618 at around $132,000. The next area would be 155, right? And these numbers, they sound crazy until they don't sound crazy. It seemed crazy that Bitcoin was going to go to 115,000, 120,000 above that just a couple weeks ago. And now here we are, right? And that's what Bitcoin tends to do. It kind of bores the average investor, right? Sometimes it just kind of chops sideways and goes down. It doesn't really seem like it's doing much. And then you wake up one day, 25%, crazy candles going straight up, right? And that's just what it does time and time again. And, for a lot of people, just as an example, that are worried about Bitcoin being at the top, this is the Pi cycle top indicator. And it's not a perfect metric for the top, but it is a good signal. And you can see once you start to get these bands crossing over right here, that kind of tells you that, this area might be getting a little overheated. Even when we had this little mid-cycle rally, we never actually touched, right? And don't forget, this was COVID, so that's a little bit of a black swan. But nevertheless, we did still technically continue to that new all-time high. And right here, we had the, well, they don't really cross, they more or less just touch, but we are not even close, guys. I mean, there's such, to get all the way up to around 173,000 basically before these things look like they may want to touch. And obviously it's still going to move a little bit farther out. Both of these moving averages are still moving to the upside. So I wouldn't really be betting against it right now if you want to try to swing a short here or there, but you're swimming against the current right now, right? Of course, there are a few things we need to be careful about. I will let you know about that, but I think what I really want to just talk about is what's happening. We're not really hearing much about it. How much farther could this realistically go? Because I do think it could actually shock a lot of people. So I do want to talk about all that today. If that sounds good to you, you know what to do. And don't forget, guys, we do have a little less than 20 hours left for this Blowfin War of the Whales. Obviously, there are, I believe, like $70,000 in all kinds of bonuses below. Check that out. And obviously meta signals, if you guys aren't using this, especially if you're trading, this is an amazing edge, and they are launching their automated, trading in Q3. So that's coming up very, very soon. And if you guys want to snatch up one of those NFTs, we do have 838 of them remaining. Of course, as the price of Ethereum rises, so does the cost of the NFTs. So that was kind of why I was trying to tell everybody we had pretty cheap ETH for quite a long time, but I digress, guys. Let's talk about what we're all here, and that is the fact that Bitcoin, if it was to remain at around the $2.39 trillion, obviously we have some Bitcoin that comes out every day, so it's not going to stay exactly at 120,000, but it literally is the fifth largest asset by market cap. Okay, the only things right now above Bitcoin are Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, and of course our good old buddy gold, sitting at around a $22 trillion market cap. More on that later. So, what else has been going on in the world of Bitcoin? Well, we have Bitcoin surpassing the Hong Kong dollar, now placing it at the, he says the seventh largest currency. So I don't know if this screenshot was taken earlier, 122. So yeah, I guess if it goes a little bit higher than this, then it is going to flip this. So that did happen temporarily. So, give or take when you guys are watching this, as far as money is concerned, Bitcoin's up there around 7-8, assets number 5. It's kind of hard to ignore this thing now. I think at this point, if you still hear people that are saying it's just fake internet money, it's not real. I mean, the charts don't lie, the numbers don't lie, the statistics don't lie. And, another thing that a lot of people have been talking about, I'll tell you a quick story real quick. I was talking to my cousin, maybe you're watching. If you're watching, Stacy, shout out. But, we were talking about different places for possible investments, right? And you can invest in, let's say, like a CD or something like that, get 5%. I mean, that's a safe bet, right? But when you think about the inflation, you're getting 2 to 3% annually, right? You do that for 5 years, you're down 10% on your purchasing power. So you put $100 away, you got $105, but you need $130 to basically have the same purchasing power that you had 5 years ago. You see what I'm saying? So it's really just you're just not getting poor essentially as fast as everyone else. And, everyone, again, talks about Bitcoin is too expensive. It's too high. They're just looking at these numbers. They're just looking at 100,000. Now, that is very expensive for the average person to purchase. I get it. If you're just getting into Bitcoin now, $120,000 Bitcoin, that's insane. You may feel like you missed the boat. But when you look at the market caps, when you look at the global distribution of wealth, here's a nice chart from James Lavish. You can see we have gold, right, at about 22 trillion. Now, that's pretty small, even gold, right, compared to things like money, bonds, real estate, equities, arts and collectibles, right? So you're talking about, these numbers are astronomical, about 1,000 trillion in global assets, 1,000 trillion, and yet here's Bitcoin sitting at around 2 trillion. So when you just imagine taking a little piece of the pie of gold, a little piece of arts and collectibles, a little piece of equities, maybe a chunk of real estate, a chunk of bonds, right? Some of that money is going to go into Bitcoin. This thing, even just becoming that of gold, right? Going from 2 to 22, you're talking about doing an 11x. So, just for simple math, let's do a 10x. That's a $1.2 million Bitcoin in today's money if it was just to simply match the market cap of gold today, not even talking about what it could do over the next decade or so. So actually, it still remains an asymmetrical risk, in my opinion, worth taking. And that's what we've been saying on this channel for a very, very long time. Every time you think you're late, you have to have that perspective, right? No one thought it was going to go to 20,000, and it did. No one thought it was going to go to 100,000, and it did. And now people don't think it's going to go to 1 million. It's going to. Why? Because they're going to keep printing money. That's what they do. That's what these central banks do, right? Inflation is not going away. And if you have something, for example, a Bitcoin power curve, and this takes into consideration 4-year cycles, averages, whatever. Obviously, these are basically just fractals pasted on top of each other. It's not going to look exactly like this, but you can clearly see that if we just maintain not even that crazy of a slope, just maintain this nice sort of upward slope, this is how you get to possibly a $200,000 Bitcoin by maybe the end of this year, beginning of next year. And you could end up with $1 million Bitcoin, possibly in 10 years from now. It's not that crazy when you really break it down on the chart. And again, as we said, people, they like to say it can't be that easy, right? It's got to be more complicated than that. It really isn't that complicated. When you have a chart like M2, money supply, right? This is global. This is all over the world. You have all these central banks printing. You have tons of devaluation of the currencies. Look what happens. I mean, of course, nothing is perfect, but look at what we're doing right here in M2. And look at where we are right now. And you don't see this lag. There was the jump right there. There was the jump right there, right? And now, look, we're lagging and it had a bit of a pullback. So we went up to 123. So therefore, it wouldn't be that shocking to possibly see Bitcoin come down, retest 117, 118, right? We do have a CME gap. I'll talk about that in a bit. But for the most part, you're talking about $200,000 seems impossible. Well, it seemed extremely impossible a month ago. Seems a little bit more likely now. But if you really just break down what Bitcoin would actually just need to do to get to 200,000, it would only need to appreciate about 0.34% each day for the next 5 months. So do you understand how small of a number that is for Bitcoin? So if Bitcoin literally just increased on average by 0.34% for the next 5 months, that's your 200K Bitcoin. And if you think that sounds outrageous, the previous cycle on average did about 0.45%. So if you take in diminishing returns, we're not even hitting those numbers, and those are still the possibilities of where Bitcoin can go. And of course, it could go much higher. For example, you have Matt Hogan over at Bitwise talking about the $200,000 possible target by the end of the year. Again, I will let you know my opinion on that. But again, why it's not that crazy to see the $1 million Bitcoin within the decade.
I think this cycle, which I'd really say lasts through this decade, until 2020, 30. I think it probably gets to about parity to gold. That's my baseline prediction. So at current prices, that's a little over $1 million a coin. Again, I could be wrong. Could go down. It's hugely risky. It's not financial advice. But if you think about sort of the level of penetration it's gotten to at each cycle, this feels like the right sort of scale of penetration. And I think the supply dynamics are about right for us to get there. So that's our prediction at Bitwise, 200K by this year, $1 million by the end of the decade.
You have the Bitcoin ETFs being some of the most successful, or actually arguably the most successful ETF of all time. You have these talks of strategic reserves. And I know everybody's been very impatient. When are they going to start doing this, right? Again, when you're in crypto, right, everything moves very fast. The real world is very slow. So adoption, as far as that is concerned, right, when we said asset managers were going to start mentioning it to their customers, well, once the ETFs were launched, we actually saw a 30% pullback. Well, why was that? It was a sell the news event, but what they were waiting for was consistency and data. They wanted to have at least 6 to 8 months of raw data on the ETFs before they felt comfortable actually possibly suggesting it to their clients. And what ended up happening? 6 to 8 months later, almost on the nose, we saw Bitcoin start to surge. We have all these different payment platforms. For example, you also have Klarna right now announcing that they're going to add Bitcoin and crypto on their platform soon. They have about 100 million users, and this is just one of countless other examples. And once you start to, it's almost like that orange pill. Once you start to understand that fiat is literally designed to just deteriorate over time. You got guys like billionaire Ricardo Salinas saying that most people don't realize that they're stuck in the matrix. Now, I know a lot of people that are watching this channel, this may not be directed at you at all. A lot of our viewers are a lot smarter, clearly, than, no offense, the average person that is, just trying to figure out how to do stuff where they should put their money, in the banks and lending. But ultimately, fiat money is the biggest fraud of them all. I mean, once, we used to be backed by gold, right? But we got taken off the gold standard. So what is it backed by now? Is it really that much more money? money. It costs basically the same amount of money to make a $5 bill, a $10 bill, a $20 bill, or a $100 bill. Now we go to the store, I give you 100, you accept that, but that's because we have a level of trust based on what? Possibly the military industrial complex, could be, but really it's just trust. It's just that I just trust you, right? But with Bitcoin, you don't have to trust, you can verify, and it can't be confiscated, especially if you have your seed phrases. So I just wanted to play this clip really quick. I thought it was interesting.
They don't realize they're inside the matrix. And for most people, they have never been educated, and they don't realize that they're in this trap, in this rat race where they will never be free, and they will be forever slaves to the big government. So some people are fine being slaves. They don't mind it, unfortunately. But I would like to say that most of us don't like it. We like to be free in control of our own decisions. And the sooner we get illustrated by Bitcoin, the better. That's why I just wrote that book, The Bitcoin Enlightenment, with some co-authors. And it explains my deep distrust and how I despise fiat. And how I think fiat is the biggest fraud around, and that the only way to get out of that fraud is through Bitcoin. It makes you responsible. You got to learn to custody your stuff. Because that's another thing. Hey, my money is safe. It's in the bank. I'm a banker, I have a bank. I have 22 million customers. And I know all about the risks. People think that they took the money to the bank, put it there, and that they're probably sitting in the vault in the backside of the bank. It's not like that. The money's gone. It's invested in it's been loaned to somebody to buy a house. That's what banks do,
That's exactly right. That's exactly.
So the banking system is also heavily reliant on the central bank as a lender of last resort. And, because we have the lender of last resort, then banks take on more risk.
And sometimes I like to play these clips. I know that you guys have heard this from me and other people in the space, but sometimes I feel like maybe I'm just repeating myself over and over again. So I like to turn it over to other people who may have similar or possibly even opposing views. But I did want to shout out MD Bitcoin. I want to just read this to you, and I want you guys to listen to this. He says, I kind of relate to this a little bit. The sad part of Bitcoin going up? The bottom-up adoption of Bitcoin is kind of finished. Retail normies had over a decade to wake up and stack when it was cheap. It still is, if you know, and nobody cared. Now the price is touching levels normies cannot comprehend, and retail is paralyzed, saying that it's too expensive, they missed their chance, while at this exact price action is the green light for trillions of institutional capital to enter in without hesitation, right? And, before I continue on reading, we had said that these bigger players, they don't think the way that the average investor thinks. They're not trying to, the smaller investor, they're not trying to just buy Bitcoin and flip it for like a quick 20% or maybe just a double. No, they're looking for long-term stability. In fact, this sounds crazy, but as price continues to go up, it actually validates it more. Because you're talking about money that, no one, trillions, well, not trillions, but a lot more money than the average person. Let's just say that. And these institutions, they certainly have a lot. BlackRock literally does have in the trillions. And, they say high prices scare the small thinkers and trigger FOMO in the big money. This is the monetization of the hardest asset on earth. Either you get in or you get left behind. Normies will spend years coping and crying while nation states, pensions, and mega funds try to eat the finite supply. This is the phase where Bitcoin stops being an opportunity and becomes a necessity. And just thinking about, I have always said, you got to try to get to one Bitcoin. You got to try to get to one Bitcoin. I wish I could rewind time and go back and have, these same ideas now and the opportunity to buy at 15 or 20 or 30 or 40K, but those opportunities have passed. I don't believe we're ever going back down to those levels again. Maybe another day I'll go into possible bear market scenarios. I don't really think it's worth bringing up right now because we really need to see how high this thing is going to go before we can even start discussing a bear market, because we're not going into a bear market. We're not in a bear market. We're not even close to a bear market. So there's no point in even talking about it. And I do think that there are a lot of opportunities. Now, one of the questions that I get a lot, especially on these videos, or what do I think about altcoins? Again, I understand you missed, maybe somebody feels they missed the boat on Bitcoin. Ethereum's going to have a better return, XRP, whatever, pick Solana, it doesn't matter, any coin that you can imagine, right? Now, the reality is 99% of these are garbage. They're meme coins, they're gambles. Let's just call them what they are. 97% rugs, like, you know, people trying to scalp things on a 10-minute chart. That's insane. That's not investing. That's gambling. But I do understand that maybe somebody feels that Bitcoin is more expensive, but that is just a perception that I can't control. Like, if you're just looking to make gains, then maybe go into some of these other things. But I don't look at it from that perspective. I see it as the greatest money that has ever been created. And there is no reason for me for this to ever change over time. You know, just as an example, XRP has been doing, let's be honest, pretty freaking awesome lately, right? Up 28%, absolutely crushing it. XLM, 84%. If we go to Stellar Lumens right here, and we go to the max, okay? This is the maximum chart. So yeah, I mean, that's crazy. If you bought down here, that's awesome. But look at how long you would have held. I mean, unless you sold, if you were timing it, right? I sold the top, I bought the bottom. I sold the top, I bought the bottom. Or maybe I just accumulated all these years. I went through a lot of rough patches and now, you know, we're still not back at all-time highs, but okay, we're you know, I guess it's good, right? You got in on it. I can't complain, but you know, holding these things for long term, you know, for example, Solana still not back at its all-time high, doing not too bad, but not back at its all-time high. XRP, amazing, right? Had you been accumulating down in this range, yeah, you did really well for yourself. If you held through this entire time and you've been buying it since 2018, yes, you are probably very happy to be holding XRP right now. However, you know, again, if you, let's say you had been buying it since 2017, which maybe some of you haven't been around that long like I have, but you know, you have a nice bag of it, but you're still not up to the all-time high. And, you know, considering the inflation over the years, yeah, it's probably still, you know, look at Ethereum, for example. So, I don't know. Again, it depends on your timing. If you got into it 2 years ago, you're doing great, right? But you don't have that problem with Bitcoin. You don't have to worry about that with Bitcoin because Bitcoin, I mean, Bitcoin's entire life looks like a parabolic curve, right? And every time we have these little parabolic curves, they say that's the end, and then we build an even bigger parabolic curve, right? So for me, it's a much safer bet, in my opinion, not financial advice. I sleep better at night holding Bitcoin, and I definitely think if you don't have any Bitcoin in your portfolio at this point, I don't know, just think about it. You know, it's really something special. And what I wanted to talk about, speaking of something very special, is something that Bitcoin has done officially for the first time ever. And again, it's not the daily candle, it's not the price, it's actually this long-term trend line. Now look, this top dates back to December of 2017, right? Which basically is you know, a little longer than a little shorter than I got into crypto before that. But as you can see right here, we started, right? And every time, and this is not on the, this is on the linear, not the log chart, okay? And every time we've touched this area, we've had multiple fake outs, but Bitcoin has always been rejected. Always been rejected. I mean, even just recently, guys, we were rejected right here. We were rejected right here. And this is on the BLX, and you could see for the first time since 2017, Bitcoin has literally closed above this. And this was last week's candle, by the way. We're actually here. This is a week behind, remember, because this is the liquid coin index, so it's always behind by one candle. This is confirmed. This is massive. I mean, this is a multi-year resistance that we've officially just smashed through. So if that doesn't make you bullish, maybe this will. You look at a lot of these older charts. I'm doing a little bit of weird TA today, guys. I'm showing you something interesting. You get these crazy parabolic trends, right? These crazy parabolic trends. I can even go back farther, you know, down to here. You get these crazy parabolic trends, right? If you look at really what we're doing right now, this is, I mean, I guess if you zoom in and you do the chart like this, maybe, you know, that looks kind of parabolic, I guess. But when you zoom out, it's not really that parabolic. I mean, we're up at around 120K, and we're still kind of just chopping between a relatively linear, you know, in a linear channel, you know, so I don't even really think that we've seen the crazy move. I mean, this is the crazy move, this move right here. I mean, guys, I mean, by definition, yes, it is technically parabolic, but, you know, not like we had seen in the past. I mean, this is very conservative for Bitcoin. I think that it could have a lot more to go. I mean, you look at these banana moves, right? The banana zones, whatever. You know, look at where we are right here. I mean, if anything's to follow 2012, 2016, 2020, this thing can get a lot crazier, a lot faster than most people are actually anticipating. And when you look at what we're doing right now, it looks pretty tame. I mean, as far as the structure goes, we pointed down here that we had this green dot on the weekly for Market Cipher. And of course, we do get these sometimes. But what I was looking at was having this moving into the money flow, right? And you're having all these moving averages, which, by the way, this one right here was even a questionable one. But when you have all four of these moving average, 200, 100, 50, and 21 in this order, and you're having the 21 as support while you're also having an increase in the money flow, and we just got the green dot, it is pretty difficult to find anything bearish in this chart right now outside of a possible black swan, or we had mentioned there is a CME futures gap technically down around 91,000 that we never closed. We also just have one that we put in recently at around 114-ish. But, you know, guys, these CME futures gaps, don't forget, they were what a lot of the institutional investors were using back in the day, right? Before we had all these, of course, futures are futures, they're not the same, but that was the way that they were getting exposure. They were betting against it with cash, whereas now with these ETFs, they can actually physically own Bitcoin. So there is a possibility, I'm not saying that these memes don't have to play out, but times do change, and maybe these CME futures gaps are not as important as they used to be, since there's so many other ways, there's so many other avenues and opportunities with, you can get involved with not MicroStrategy, they're just strategy now, or MSTY or any of these other Bitcoin treasury companies, which maybe we'll leave that topic for another day. This video's already gone on long enough, but I just don't know that it maybe holds as much weight as it used to. But again, there is that possibility we could have the small pullback. But, looking at this massive trend that you have on this EME ribbon right here, the most interesting is when you have these sort of flips, right? These are really dangerous areas. When this ribbon inverts and you have the lowest of the bands, the purple line, the lavender, switching sides, right? Well, if you could see right back here, we had the opposite, and that was around October of 23. And that was a big moment for Bitcoin. And ever since then, yeah, we've dipped down, but we've never closed outside of this and never even attempted to touch down on this lowest EMA, which, by the way, is sitting at around 77,000 and rising. So until you start seeing something like this, I mean, guys, this is massively constructive. Massively constructive. There is absolutely no reason to assume that this should be ending anytime soon. Only thing is, you have the DXY possibly finding some form of a support here. Could we bounce back up to the one? Sure. But, it's not looking too good for it, to be honest. And we know what happens with risk assets. So that's basically where I'm leaving with you guys today. I know it was kind of scattered. I haven't been making as many videos, but I just like to remind you guys. I feel like if I just make videos every day, I'm basically just going to keep coming on and saying, hey, everything's great. It looks good. Bull runs on. You know what I mean? Obviously, if you are looking to trade this, it's very easy when you have momentum like this. This is when everyone's a genius. Everyone gets lucky. But if you do, again, want that proven edge, I do still recommend checking out Meta Signals. If you have, obviously you can sign up in the Discord for free. You don't have to pay for anything. I recommend getting the NFT because you're going to get all of these for life, and, compare it with some of your other charts. If you guys are trading, there's lots of really good non-KYCs. For example, you have Femex. Their competition did just end, but I do still have my bonus available, as well as Levex, where I do occasionally post some charts that I don't put out necessarily on X or YouTube. So ultimately, guys, that is it for me. Thank you so much for coming back to the channel. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you made it this far, obviously dropping a comment or a like is great for the algorithm. It helps to push this video out to other people. And yeah, that's about it for right now. So if you guys want to trade, you can check out my tutorials as usual, popping up right here, right now, guys. Until next time, stay crypto. And of course, peace out.